high demand without support is laziness. I hate saying it, but that's a lazy coach. Just saying I demand at a high level. Okay. But like, that's only half the equation. And so the truly, what we would call like master, I would say, is someone that gets that high demand is absolutely a part of it. And they're going to high support their athletes so that they're willing to go for it and know that even when they fail, we're going to come back and try it again. And it's okay in this world, in this environment that we create.
Welcome to the Cutting Edge Coaching Podcast, where we believe coaches are some of the most important teachers and leaders in the world, and they deserve to be supported. I'm your host, Luke Gromer, and every week we're bringing you conversations with coaches, experts, and leaders from across sports that will help you get better at teaching and leading so that you can develop high-performing teams and high-character people. Coaches, I'm excited to welcome sports psychologist Stu Singer to the podcast. Stu has worked as a performance psychology coach for over a decade. He has worked in the NBA, WNBA, NCAA Division I, MLS, NWSL, men's and women's soccer national team members, and with U.S. Olympic gold medalists. He has been an integral staff member for a 2019 WNBA World Championship, 2 NCAA Final Fours, 5 Big Ten championships, 9 NCAA tournaments, a Conference USA championship, and an Atlantic 10 championship. His most notable work includes his roles with the Washington Wizards, Washington Mystics, University of Maryland, Ole Miss University, Rice University, and multiple individual athletes from around the world's top leagues. His approach focuses on teaching and providing mental performance skills for athletes that have the pressures of competing at elite levels of sport. In addition to his one-on-one and teamwork, he also has created the mindfulness-based performance psychology app, Doso, that puts the user through his uniquely designed mindset workouts. Stu completed his Doctor of Psychology coursework at the University of the Rockies, specializing in sport and performance psychology, and is a professional member of the Association for Applied Sports Psychology. Additionally, he received his Master's in Education and Counseling from Shippensburg University. In part one of this conversation, we talk about 4 universal triggers for fear and anxiety, how to help athletes embrace struggle and discomfort, how to build trust, and the importance of being a coach that offers both high demand and high support. If you enjoyed the episode and want to grab a copy of the podcast notes, just check out the link in the show details. And if you're interested in learning more about how we support coaches, the book clubs, cohorts, or trainings, just check out the links in the show details or just send me an email. Also, I'm running another book club at the end of January that's going to dive into practice design and culture. Multiple spots have already been claimed, so make sure to check out the link in the show details if you want more information about the next book club or if you want to sign up. Now to part one of my conversation with Stu Singer. Enjoy the episode. All right, coaches, really excited to welcome Stu Singer to the podcast today. Stu, I would love if we just started off and talked about a topic that we initially connected on, fear of failure, and really about how fear of failure, it doesn't develop in a vacuum, and just how often well-intentioned adults, leaders, coaches, we can trigger or impact this fear of failure that our athletes might have. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and if I recall, I really loved the tweet that you had put out, and I believe it was based that you had quoted some research that you had read, and it was, essentially that fear of failure doesn't exist in a vacuum just with the young athlete. Like they just became fearful of failing. And what I know and what I see and what my experience has been is that, we kind of, on one hand, tell everybody, no, it's about, trying and having a good process, just go out there, win or lose, and just give your best. But then the greater societal message is, no, you do have to, win, and you do have to succeed, and you have to succeed in the classroom, and you have to succeed on the court or on the field or whatever. And we hold up legends, that have only won, we talk about, well, is someone a really, they're a Hall of Fame quarterback because they've only thrown for 70,000 yards, but they never won a Super Bowl. So are they really any good? And so like we have these really conflicting messages about like the relevance of succeeding and what that looks like and what that means to succeed. And I just think that we need to get better at the understanding of the nuance of that conversation. And do we really buy into the idea that, like literally giving everything that you have is what it's about, or is winning it what it's all about? And that's okay too, per se, I guess. But then we are going to be fearing of failure, because we've said it's an all or nothing game, at that point.
Yeah. And as you were talking, my mind was, I guess I was just thinking about, what can we as coaches do, or people that are working with athletes in sport to fight those larger messages that maybe they're hearing from society, maybe they're hearing from their parents, their peers. I mean, there's tons of messages that our athletes are getting all the time. How do we fight those, and how do we help athletes, break out of maybe some of those beliefs that they have that maybe they don't even realize?
Yeah. It's a really great question. And I would say that unfortunately, it's not a super like perfect answer with it, because, you said it, they're just bombarded with messages now. And it's really almost an onslaught, and it's almost impossible to prevent all those messages from getting there. And so here's where I would start. One is that, like first and foremost, the idea of fear of failure is actually essentially like normal. We're designed to thrive. Like that's the human condition. It's part of our survival instinct, which is the greatest driver that we have. And so this idea of not succeeding, which would then send a message that we are not thriving, is normal. So first of all, like kind of normalizing. So instead of saying, you can't have this, right? Because now that shuts down any kind of real dialogue and conversation. It's way better to say, no, I get it. It's normal to have like those butterflies and those worries and like, it might be easier to just not do it because of anxiousness and stress that comes with competing. And so first and foremost, the normalizing of it and saying, yeah, I've probably felt that myself at times. Okay. First, as coaches, we can do that. Second, that we can do is really validate and really push the idea of doing hard, difficult things is really important, like massively important. We must put ourselves in the space of discomfort, of being scared sometimes. Like, I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I'm going to do this anyways. So that has massive relevance. And it's about growth. It's about building resilience to challenge and difficult things. It's about the idea that just because it happens once, meaning failure or not succeeding or not winning or not making a team, does not mean it's going to happen again, because we have to do it again and again. And so if we do all those things, man, that's really good for us as individuals. That's really good for our youth to do, because it's going to be a bigger part of life. And if we can get those two messages, A, I get it, I understand this, but here's what I want you to know, that feeling that and going for it anyways has massive value. And if you fail, like, yeah, it's going to be painful. Yeah, it's not what you want. And guess what? Tomorrow we can start over again. Those things, I mean, they're simplistic, but they're powerful.
Yeah, that's a really good list. I think that those things are so important. I mean, you've worked with tons of teams, tons of athletes. I'm curious, and maybe you have a story, maybe there's just some general things that you've observed or learned, but how do you approach or help the athlete that is just so adverse to getting out of their comfort zone? And I think the things you just said are a piece of it. Like those athletes that, they just don't want to do anything that could make them uncomfortable or make them look bad. Like how do we get them to a place where they actually see and embrace see and embrace that, okay, discomfort, struggle is good.
Yeah. I would say the first thing, again, I'm a big believer in some education on this, and starts with coaches being educated, by the way, not the athletes first. So all coaches should understand this, that there are basically like 4 universal triggers for all of us. The first one is uncertainty. When we don't know what's going to happen, it is a trigger for stress and fear. Okay, maybe not deep, but it's there. Okay, so uncertainty. Attention, when people are paying attention, it's why even in a classroom, you're a teacher, you know that some students have an answer, but they don't want to raise their hand. Why? Because everybody's going to look at them, and for whatever reason, even if they, I'm 98% sure that I get this, but 2% of me says maybe I won't. I don't want kids looking at me and laughing at me. 3 is change. And then 4 is struggle. When we know that we are going to struggle, whether that be physical struggle, like maybe this is going to be a little bit painful, like a really difficult workout, or struggle as in I'm probably not going to look competent when I first try this. This is outside of my experience. And these are 4 universal, like you across the board. I will tell you that majority of all of us experience those things when we experience stress and fear, when we're up against that. Okay. So first and foremost, I would say that. Then it becomes, once again, as a coach now, what's your environment? You get to create, especially at the youth level. I mean, this might be more, at the you said you coach 9th grade basketball. At the 9th grade, 10, high school level is where you're going to see this massively, to the point where some kids will decide not to participate anymore, or just not to go for it. Right. Majority of my athletes, because I'm at the collegiate, professional level, majority, not all, but majority, they've figured out how to overcome, like not wanting to do it. They'll put themselves there. It doesn't mean they don't have fears and anxieties, believe me. It just simply means that they've gone past this one. But younger athletes have this. And what I would say is, what's the environment you create? So do you value the idea of going for it? Do you make sure that your team understands, like, if someone goes for it, we're like valuing that, and we're not making fun, we're not cracking jokes if someone, isn't great at a new skill set that we're trying to develop. And then having that personal relationship developed with that young athlete that says, like, hey man, fear's part of this. Okay. But man, it's valuable to do. And like all of us have had those moments where we've gone for it, haven't achieved, and it's all part of the process. And we have to accept that quote unquote failure is not the opposite of success. It is literally just part of the process of success. Like it's essential in the path to success. We have to, it's like, I don't know anybody that's succeeded every single time they've ever done something. It's impossible.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And what you said towards the end there, just the question, what kind of environment are you creating? And do we value it when someone goes for it? And not only that, do we celebrate it? Do we recognize it? Man, they went for it, and we love that, and we respect that in this environment. I think that's huge, especially if you do have those athletes, man, they're so averse to getting uncomfortable doing those things. And it doesn't mean that it'll be an overnight or easy thing, but if the environment is consistently like that, and they're getting, messages of safety and belonging, and they're not being triggered by those things that you mentioned, the uncertainty and those other things. Yeah, I think that can move the needle a lot for them. I think it ties in well to what we were just talking about, but I want to talk a little bit about developing trust and coaches developing trust with their athletes. And so maybe, if you would share from your experience working with teams and athletes, some of the common things that coaches may fall into that really break or prevent trust from being built, and how we can practically start building trust better with the athletes that we coach and lead.
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that question because just earlier today I was talking to one of my a coach that I work with at the collegiate level. We have a lot of discussions, and one of the things I said is how deeply we misunderstand. I think today, especially, maybe more than ever, today's athlete, and how deep the idea of trust goes. Like, we want our content to be great. We want our X's and O's to be great. We want our practice plan to look really good. All these different things, and we forget just how deeply we need to build trust, because without trust, they're probably going to be more resistant to going and being, let's say, locked in to what we're asking them to do. Or the message is received differently when there is trust as opposed to when there isn't. So like all this stuff can be good, but if the trust isn't there, it's like so important. And I think we don't spend enough time in that part of it. And we spend maybe way too much on some of the content, and not that the content doesn't matter. It just maybe doesn't matter quite as much as what we have it. So, but here's how I would do it. I actually work with a little bit of a like almost like a mathematic formula for it, which is trust equals, and it equals competency, consistency, and care over agenda. Okay. So yes, competency would be like, hey, what are we running? Do I know my X's and O's? Do I have a feel for the game? Can I explain it? Right. Like all those things are going to be your competency. But man, here's where I see it break down is the consistency. So how do you show up every day? How do you interact? I know, even at the professional level, I'll have clients that'll say that their coach, like they'll be joking with them, right? And then all of a sudden they're in practice and like something happens and they like say something and player turns and kind of smiles at them like, oh, we're still joking. And and all of a sudden the coach like just goes nuts and is like, no, we're not joking. What do you, and it's just, it's hard to get your footing in a scenario like that. If you're a player's coach, be a player's coach. If you're not a player's coach, don't be a player's coach, but be consistent. Whatever it is that you are, be you as deeply and as authentically as you can be. And then the care part, like, do you authentically care? Like, do you care beyond just that I, scored enough points last night or that we won last night, but that you actually care about me, the human being? And then it's all over agenda. Like, what's the coach's agenda? And that agenda, hopefully it's that it's about them, that this is their experience, not about you and your experience. And if you get those things right, I will bet you that you're going to develop pretty deep trust over time with your athletes. If you get those wrong, or one of them's kind of deeply out of place, you're probably not going to get it. It's just that simple.
That's really powerful. And I like those 3 C words that you shared. And like you said, it's so important to have all of them. If you're missing one, I think it's a recipe for kind of disaster and mistrust, and it's not going to be built. And what you said about consistency, I think is just so powerful and so important because, unfortunately, and like you said, it's every level. Unfortunately, in sports, for the most part, coaches have been given a free pass to act however they want in the name of performance or motivation, whatever it might be. And so, when a coach shows up erratically, like that example is such a perfect one. I was joking with my coach and then all of a sudden they snapped at me. And then to tie back to what you said earlier, right? That's our survival instinct is like, what is going on here?
That's it.
It's uncertain. I'm not safe here. How do I trust this person? They're joking with me and then they're yelling at me. So I just don't think that the importance of that can be understated too. We have to show up consistently.
And like we all have stuff in our own life, right? Like we're all real people as well as coaches. So like if whatever it is in your real life is potentially getting in the way of that ability to be consistent. Maybe you're a pretty high energy, positive person, and that day you're just like, I know I'm not feeling it. Then be authentic about that and just say, hey, I got what I have. I'm fine, but we're going to do this, or try to snap into that performance self as best as possible for the hour and a half, 2 hours of practice. But it's not that we have to be perfect every day, but we should be pretty close to our best, our most consistent. Who we are should be what they should expect every single day.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. And I remember as an athlete too, it wasn't fun going into a practice where you didn't know what to expect from your coach.
Well, you did a good job of connecting it back to that survival instinct. So if think about our internal drive, our internal scanner, I guess is a better word of saying that, is that we're always scanning for safety. Is this safe or isn't it? Okay. We can't stop that. That's hardwired into us. And so when you know that things are not consistent, that suggests lack of safety in that moment. Now, it's what we're reading. It doesn't mean that there's really lack of safety, but it's kind of how it gets, filtered. And that means that immediately our fight or flight has been triggered. So if we want your athletes to be at your best, typically you want them to be focused. We want them to be relatively calm, like calm in a sport way of calm, which means focused yet alert, not overwhelmed. And we've already, just by not being consistent, I've already, like an uptick in the potential for them to not feel in their best space, just by not being consistent, not showing up in a consistent way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love if you just talked a little bit more about building a safe environment. I know it's connected to quite a few of the things we've hit on already, but yeah, if you're working with a coach and this is a focus, what are you advising him on? How are you helping him create a safe environment? What do we do to actually ensure that we've created a safe environment?
I don't know if you've ever seen the graphic of psychological safety and like how it's broken down, but basically on one hand we have like skill demand or just demand, and then on the other one we have like support, right? And so when you have like low demand, but high support, you actually have like a boredom, right? Like that, like it's like. There's like, this isn't demanding, yet they're like, yeah, you're okay, go. It's like, well, what am I? I'm not even doing anything, right? So the ultimate, like psychologically safe and kind of the best environment is one where we do have like relatively high demand, high expectation, but yet with high support from the leader, from the coach. And that's the one where like growth and like pushing boundaries and that going for it is most reinforced and respected and celebrated. Like you use the word celebrating it, is where a coach both is like, hey, yeah, we have high expectations, like we're doing this, like you're going to go into discomfort and we're here all together, all supporting this. Like we're going to cheer for it. If you don't get it, we're going to support you through it. We're going to teach you how to get there. So you can have both, right? And in fact, we don't want high, support without the demand, because that's a boring space for the athletes to be in. But vice versa, if you have high demand but low support, that's where anxiety and stress is going to be. And that's going to be probably the more fearful athlete. So, I one of the things that I'm drawn to your site is that coaching is a science and an art. And you got to get that part of it right to be a great coach. Like high demand without support is laziness. I hate saying it, but that's a lazy coach. Just saying I demand at a high level, okay, but like that's only half the equation. And so the truly what we would call like master, I would say, is someone that gets that high demand is absolutely a part of it, and they're going to high support their athletes so that they're willing to go for it and know that even when they fail, we're going to come back and try it again, and it's okay in this world, in this environment that we create.
Yeah, I like that. Just the idea of high support and high demand, that we can have both. I think that you'll probably appreciate the language or phrasing around this. On episode, I think it was 21, I talked with Jason Watson. He's the volleyball coach at the University of Arkansas. And he just used this language that was really helpful for me as I kind of think through that similar idea. And he picked it up from his college coach. And his college coach told him, it's my responsibility to be both good to and good for you.
Yeah.
Good to in the way that I treat you and support you. Good for you in the way that I develop you and challenge you and help you grow. And I just think that, like you said, we've got to embrace both. And if we don't, really, it's a little bit of laziness on our part, right? We're asking our athletes to stretch themselves, to be challenged. We've got to do the same thing. We need to develop the skills, both in the supporting area and the demanding area, to be able to do both together. The other thing, or do you have something to add to that?
No. It's essential. And I really like the simplicity of that good to and good, good to and good for.
Yeah.
I love that. I might steal it for sure. Because I think that that's the most simplistic yet clear way of saying, like, it's not enough to be one or the other. It's a master coach is both. And if you're not that, that's okay. But what are you doing in your coach education? What's your plan? Like we put a lot on athletes to become better, and we should. Like, that's the nature of coaching, is that there should be that push to get outside of what you currently are, 100%. But like in those moments where a coach might hear that and go, that's not me, I don't do that. Well, why? What if a player said, that's not me, I don't do that, and it's something that you want? Like I just feel like we have to, walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
I think that example is hilarious that you just shared. Yeah. What if you asked a player to do something, they just said, nah, that's not me. But
I don't do that.
We do it all the time as coaches. That's not my style. That's not my personality. I'm not going to develop in that area. When we flip the script, sometimes we just sound ridiculous if we look at it from another lens. Coaches, thanks for listening to this episode. I'll be back next week with part 2 of my conversation with Stu. And as always, if you enjoyed the episode and want a copy of the podcast notes, check out the link in the show details. I've got 3 takeaways from part 1 of this conversation. First, what kind of environment are we creating? Are we creating an environment that values and celebrates when athletes get outside of their comfort zone and embrace struggle? If we want athletes to do this more, then we must make it safe for them to do it and recognize it when they do. Second is Stu's formula for trust. Trust equals competency, consistency, and care over agenda. We must prioritize building trust if we truly want to make a positive impact on their lives and help them reach their full potential as an athlete. Third is the importance of being a high demand and high support coach. We've got to do both. Now, I'll add one note here. High demand does not mean that we need to scream and yell at athletes. You can be demanding without being demeaning. High demand is about setting high expectations or standards and holding those expectations or standards high, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable to do so. Be a high demand and high support coach. It's what our athletes need. Like I mentioned in the intro, if you want to learn more about how we serve coaches, just check out the links in the show details. And if you're interested in joining the next book club, make sure you check out the link in the show details to learn more or sign up. Thanks for listening to the podcast.